All right, I think we're ready.
All right.
You know
You
the
share?
Yeah, it says we're recording.
Nah, did you share your screen?
Yeah, did it stop sharing it?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I still have it up.
Oh, it's still up on your guys's?
Yeah, I can see it still.
Oh. Well, maybe it's just because I'm on my phone.
If you click on what is it like in the top right corner? Because sometimes that happens on mine.
Well, on my phone, it's down on the bottom right-hand corner.
I got it now.
Nice.
All right. Coolio. All right. So I'll just read the questions again. So the first one was, what kind of moral character does democracy require per Pericles? And why is it necessary for a functioning democracy?
Okay, I can go ahead and start off. I said the kind of moral character that it requires is for people to care about what's going on in public affairs and policy making, and for them to be able to hear different perspectives and be able to listen when they hear those and think through certain decisions and stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't have much to say. I thought Bree pretty much covered it really well. I did manage to throw in one of my favorite lines, which is "High tides raise all ships," and I think that's kind of the attitude that it takes in order to keep a successful democracy. So,
Yeah. I mean, I agree, like, with um everything you guys said, and then it's just like necessary because like basically like we need the morals like in place just for people to have them. Otherwise they'll start to get like self-centered and more like egotistic, and the democracy won't like be functioning anymore if these people are that are leading it are self-centered. Like it's just the whole like point of the democracy is that everyone like has equal like participation, equal rights, and everything like that. So if the leaders start getting self-centered, then it's not going to function the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, I'm going to go off of what you guys said, though I wrote a little bit more about it. But I'll just go on ahead and say what I wrote. I I said, democracy required that citizens exercise moderation and guard their cities securely against tyrants or demagogues. It requires intelligence to foresee outcomes of both good and bad policies. Pericles was powerful because of his prestige and his intelligence. Moreover, by looking at leaders like him, government works best when men are incorruptible, in the same way Thucydides describes them. Furthermore, Pericles refused to humor fellow Athenians in his speeches by telling them how things really are, not what they wanted to hear. Consequently, Athens held him in high esteem. He risked angering them, especially when it came to truth and reality. Pericles wasn't afraid to instill fear into the citizens to root out ignorance or insolence. Likewise, he also quelled unneeded fear in the population by raising their spirits and giving them courage. By name, Athens is a democracy, yet they were led by its first man, Pericles. Those after him were equal among themselves, and everyone wanted to be the chief, which is what Thucydides said. Therefore, they neglected the state to be popular with the people, in turn refusing their fundamental responsibilities. And as quoted by Thucydides, Pericles was successful because he governed without inhibition and was not led by the people, but instead led them with his, I guess, civilitas, fides, and auctoritas, which is just like um, civility, fidelity, and authority.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything I can really add on to that. I think you guys pretty much covered that entire question really well.
All right, let's go on to number 2. So, why is it hard to keep democracy functioning in a time of war? What happens to individuals, and why is that incompatible with a democratic character?
I think Thucydides said it best when he said people lose their wits during war. Individuals of the state contract the war mentality. Office holders divide into rivaling groups and factions who then fight and debate each other's policies. Instead of working together in unison, corruption and civil discord takes over along with demagoguery and tyranny. The state slowly breaks apart and politicians lose their moral compass, which leads to further civil strife between politicians and the supporters of those politicians. And for democracy to really work, the majority needs to be able to make bipartisan decisions, not partisan ones. And furthermore, people such as the public must hold office holders accountable, which usually decides if a society elects, I guess, a Pericles or a Cleon.
Backpacking on what Brad said, I think that like you would see a lot of the civil discord just disappear entirely because you're either on board with the war or you're the enemy, I guess, from that standpoint. And so it would be hard to get anything done.
Yeah, it definitely, another problem would be that like a lot of the men are drafted to go fight in the war, so they won't be there to help vote and make decisions. And back in those days, men were by far the majority, if not all of the electorate. So it would really just end up being the men who are wealthy enough or powerful enough to stay behind during the wars that would be making a lot of the decisions.
Yeah, and then also like just like generally in war, like people feel threatened, obviously like by their opponent or the enemy or whoever it is. And so like whenever like you feel threatened like as a state, like you want to do whatever you can to keep power and not just like keep power, but like basically like return the threat back to, just to like try and push them back. But when it comes down to this, like I feel like people start to abandon their morals, which then like back to the last question we had, like you need those morals to have like a functioning democracy. So basically it would just like it would lead to like the breakdown of a democratic order.
Yeah, I basically just said what you guys said. Clayton, what you said really was my entire answer. Like how people, they don't want to listen to any other views. Like during war, it's just either you're with it or you're not, and that's obviously not good for democracy.
All right. So, what is Lysistrata's criticism of wartime democracy, and what are the dangers internal to the city? I mean, she had like many criticisms. Like, she said the war was expensive. Like, it kind of seemed never ending. Like, there was no end in sight, and then like it was just being normalized, just like wartime, like which like was described when she was talking about like the soldiers who were like fully armed in the streets. Like how obviously that's not normal. It also allowed for like corruption and women like didn't have the right to vote. So those are a bunch of like the criticisms she had.
I mean, I think that pretty much covers it. You got anything, Brad?
Um, you guys pretty much said it all. I just wrote it a little bit more. I said that Lysistrata explains that the war is essentially disruptive to the state and corrupt men who are throwing their weight around trying to become elected into office and costing the lives of husbands and sons. She says they should be able to make suggestions, especially because the city is being mismanaged by men, which is why she and her fellow women capture the treasury. She argues that the war is detrimental to the city. Examples of some of the danger include corrupt men, especially in office. She uses Pysander, for instance, who she accuses of stirring things up and dipping into the public's funds. Furthermore, war is damaging to the public's morale and psyche. For another example, she says that it is completely strange that men are walking fully armored in the markets, which intimidates fellow citizens and whom she refers to as lunatics. Because of the war, oligarchy and wealth prevails in Athens, which allows corruption, mismanagement, greed, power plays, and ultimately tyranny and demagoguery, which, thinking about it, makes me reminded of Thucydides' description of Cleon in Book 3 in 37, pages 37-38, History of the Peloponnesian War, which we just read.
Okay, and then lastly, what are some of the arguments for the extension of voting or political power in Lysistrata?
I didn't finish my thought. Okay. I said I didn't really give a couple arguments. I just said like the people in charge aren't doing what they're supposed to do. So if they extend voting power, some changes can happen finally.
Yeah, I mean, it's not only is it just the right thing to do, but it makes the most sense. I mean, if you have the majority of your electorate off in a foreign country fighting, I mean, who's back to run things, right? So not having anybody that has any say in what's going on is kind of what fosters the corruption within the government, from my point of view.
Does anyone have anything else to add? Or that they want to?
I'll just highlight a quote that I took out of the reading. She said, before women were too modest to object to anything men did. She refers to major blunders committed on behalf of the magistrate, and women wouldn't make such blunders if voting extension took place. People would help to bring peace, especially the women. She argues that a responsible policy is needed, which is why she suggests that the states send ambassadors to Sparta so that peace could be pursued instead of war. And she also suggests that if voting power was to be extended, the citizens could begin to pick out the burrs or parasites, as in politicians who have created rivaling factions in Athenian politics. And she also says that they need to remove the knots, and separate them and throw them away into the basket of civic goodwill.
I think that pretty well covers it. Everything. Everybody say everything they wanted to.
Yep.